We are live! Here we are again for the second time today, as we just completed our prologue session, very quick session, putting us up to 1:30 today. We'll be with you for the next few hours here as we discuss our Portal Mountain development and eat burritos. Most importantly,
so good.
I should move the horse out of the way. Now we can see the burrito better. And if you didn't know, people change. Yeah, so this is the today's session, Portal Mountain Develop Meeting number 38, in which we are planning to carry on with the kind of discussions we were having last session, which was actually like 4 weeks ago, because we missed the last one. I had apparently COVID or something like that. It was my
Good
fault.
old Rona.
My fault, and then I was tired and everything. But so this promises to be a refreshing session in which many people have meditated and discussed, and lots of stuff happened since then.
It wasn't you being tired, by the way.
Well, for the last couple of weeks, I'm just saying I have been tired. Even to catch up on what I should have done for the last session.
Because I was
right?
going to say, the only reason it didn't happen is because of the black spot.
Black spot. Well, Sunday. Yeah, I know. Like,
The Rona.
the Rona. Couldn't do it. Like, I almost would have. I was almost feeling good enough to. I was down for a couple days, but then it's like I'm still probably contagious, and why? So
And I still probably wouldn't have seen you.
nobody wanted that. Yeah, so here we are, updating ourselves. We were talking last time about kind of guild dynamics related stuff, the section 5 of the book that we are planning right now, which I will be writing. Portal Mountain, the quest for coherence.
This is not in the correct place.
No, that's skunked. Just leave it, it's fine. It's skunked. Good eye, though. Didn't want to leave any soldiers behind. Somebody will drink it someday, probably. But it won't be cold.
I guess it won't be me.
Yeah, so our last time we were getting into like focus on the areas of concern, and kind of we were turning the whole book towards practical practice of what does the individual do, the self, as we've been just calling it. Self as opposed to social, which we kind of take those practices and understandings and expand them outwards.
It's part of a whole.
Understanding that this self replicates and there are other selves and all of that. Yeah, so that's kind of where we left off, and we didn't even fully complete that, really that section. There was a bit more to be said, so we're going to recap self a little bit. Then we're going to try and move into social, in which we discuss, pardon, that was probably very loud, the dashboard, deck protocol. So these are like kind of how to expand outwards, how to share media with other people, how to make something bigger happen, right? How do you actually do that?
Well,
So that's the logical next steps for the book.
how does all this work about the self relates to a greater context of being a self in the context of others?
Mm-hmm. Right, again, yep. Exactly, and that's moving in towards the social. And then hopefully near the end of this today's live stream, we'll get into Portal Mountain organization itself and kind of some of the things that the structures of the organization itself, how that works. The lobby, by Coherence, the campus, the academy, the different, anyways, temperament-based locations, if you will, on the mountain.
I guess to do that.
It's a myth, right? It's a myth to be taken up and utilized. A language.
To do
many
that,
things.
temperament has to actually make some sense. Because Portal Mountain structure,
Temperament's something we had to bring up
the very
before we even get into that.
the very
Correct.
hyperstition of the structure itself is laced or is emergent from the concept of temperaments and coherence. It's a cross. It's
Right.
like a cross.
This is the first section we need to get over right now. Involves temperaments, and the
Okay.
recap part.
So-
So we're gonna
so-
get into that very soon.
So interestingly, what we've already established is the arc of coherence. If we establish the arc of temperaments, we can get into the structure of the Portal Mountain, because it kind of unifies the two arcs together. That's the hyperstition that unifies
The
them.
arc of temperament and of coherence.
Mhm.
I agree. Yep.
And that's that chart where you have temperament and coherence as axis, and then you have wanderer and
Right.
researcher and all that.
Yes. Okay. So that's good. Good to bring that up. 100%. And I think I will just quickly remind. As I'm sure it's in here somewhere.
That's the one.
Way too close.
Oh shit.
We'll just shrink her down a little bit there.
Yeah. So
Yep.
there's a correlation between the two, and the structure, and the emergent structure out of that correlation is what the Portal Mountain's hyperstition is meant to capture.
This is why the locations are the way they are. And the locations aren't unique to the network we've set up. Portal Mountain acts as kind of like a self-replicating federation of itself, that other people can set up their own media with their own lobby, their own academy. Would be the idea. So we're just describing a template, basically.
Well, in some sense, yes, but in the sense that DNA is a template, and that you can't really have a human being if you don't have human DNA.
Right. It's not just an arbitrary thing, take it up or don't. This is what happens in the guild. This is the guild. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good outline there for what's upcoming. And I don't think we want to go too much into that. Maybe we will end up, but the book itself of what has been talked, right? Like, we got a bit of time. We can chill. We can kind of introduce the book again, or what we think, where it's
Let's
going.
recap. Did we finish the recap?
We finished talking about where this session is going to go. So if you missed that, you can always scroll back. You know, over the last 8 minutes here. Yeah, so we
yeah.
can recap the book itself. That would be probably nice
So the recap,
as well.
The recap is about the degrees of coherence.
We start with the charlatanism, though, question. The zeitgeist, right? To pull any reader in. Any
No.
reader should understand the
I'm just
zeitgeist.
saying that the full arc of it leads into what coherence is.
The quest for coherence,
we
right?
now
It makes
have-
sense. We start with that. It's
We
right
now
up
have to
front.
have a secondary arc
Temperament.
form from the same
Right.
initial exposition
Okay.
that allows us to build up on temperament,
I got
and then
you.
we're going to combine them. And once we combine them, we have the initial backdrop
And
of Portal Mountain
the
as
way
a,
you
as a
combine them
hyperstation, and
is
then the functional representation, which is found in the words found here.
like the neural operating system and the Hellonic Model. That's where you combine them, correct? In that discussion, the neural OS layers and the Hellonic Model isn't that where the intersection of coherence and temperament is found? Isn't that where it's completed in that discussion? Or where do you think it is? Where does temperament and coherence
It
actually...
stands on its own to me. It's like we have articulated this part of the model, we forked off another articulation of the model, and now we're bringing the forked paths into one coherent point that utilizes the ideas of the moment, everything else that's been said already.
Let me show you what I'm talking about. The question is just exactly where to put it, but grab another hopefully sharpened pencil. And then we could, if we wanted to, this is what I'm proposing, line up. I was just like, wait, does it work like that?
Those words are already on the chart.
Can't you line up that and this and these? That's what I was thinking. Like, there's some way to relate them through the Hellonic model. Like, totally different dimensions.
You want to introduce the terms?
Does it? Maybe it doesn't work like that.
No, there's no need, because coherence is captured by the domains of progress and is about the general concept of coherence, right? Mastery of coherence itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, the temperaments themselves rise to the highest concept, which it's not a subordinate to coherence.
Coherence
Temperament
have
is not
isomorphisms with the neural OS layers. Temperaments have isomorphisms with neural OS layers.
Mm-hmm.
But much like
That's what I was trying. I thought
much like
it
the
was
Son,
simple, but
much like the Son is not the Father, and the Father is not the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is not Jesus. But they're all
Sure.
God.
Sure.
There's a relationship like that going on. So yeah, you can go through the neural OS layers and get the isomorphism, but can you get it to speak of relevant things about this?
Mhm.
With that, probably not.
Of course. Yeah, you would be saying one temperament seems inferior to another somehow.
Which is absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah. So scratch that. It's just a thought. Just a thought. Good to explore, for sure. We need to get into temperaments.
Devotional will correspond to participant. Pragmatic will correspond to member. Academic will correspond to master.
That's what I was trying to write down.
But those aren't like rankings that should be looked at as inferior or superior. Those are isomorphisms in the sense that a master is knowledgeable.
Right. That's the purpose of it. But you can have a perceptive who is knowledgeable.
A participant,
right,
is there in body.
Any temperament can be a member or a master. That's the problem of trying to make this type of one-to-one.
There's not a one-to-one. What I'm saying is that there's isomorphic interpretations. with
Mhm. So
with the way you should look at, say, what does the devotional temperament look like? It looks a lot like what you
so
see in the participant.
you're using it like an analogy.
Oh yeah,
You're not saying it's equivalent, but it's possible to utilize it as an analogy.
a mapping, an isomorphism.
Correct. That's what we can get out of that.
This is why isomorphism is a key word in our parlance, because isomorphism does not mean this is that.
Right.
It means like you have a representation of this here,
And you can make transformations,
based on that based on that parallel. Yeah.
analogies.
So if you need to get a like a stereotypical overview of what different levels of coherence would look like to the external observer, right? The devotional and the participant would look similar. The pragmatic and the member would look similar. The academic
Yeah.
and the
Right. But you don't want to say like, well, every academic is a master and every
no, that's not what's
devotional
happening
is
here.
only is merely
That's
a
not what's
participant.
happening here. This is an inference drawn. It's very much metaphorical.
Yeah.
It's a mythology.
So
it's a
not
mythology
not
through and
necessarily useful in that kind of blunt way, but we would maybe a point I wanted to bring up to say something like percentages of the population of who would subscribe to certain temperaments strongly is maybe, let's say, academic. I don't know. Just was thinking of some numbers. It can be lower, whatever. Academic 5%, perceptive
5%.
10% or similar, maybe 5.
No, they're the extremes, right? That's the eye diagram.
Right, but some more common than others. Maybe that's what my impression was. Anyways, you can throw these numbers out. Pragmatic 15%, and then what have you left? You've used up, what is that, 30? So 70% as devotional.
Right, and that's like throwing numbers out of our ass for sure.
But it's really interesting to note that, because why would we say that? That there seem to be way more than half of people tend to be devotional, tend to concretely look at the narratives and put narratives in perspective of their commitment record.
But also look at their disposition.
That's their basis of their that's how they orient with reality.
But look at what is easiest to gravitate towards in the current commodification plateau. In the current commodification plateau, the easiest way to not rock the boat
oh my God,
is to
it's
follow
all
the algorithm.
True. So it's all forcing you sort of towards the concrete levers and buttons being pushed.
Yeah, funneling effect.
Yeah. Right.
And you can
so
so
over time,
and basically any stepping away in systemic terms, any stepping away from pushing levers and pushing buttons is deviance. And so that deviance could either be recuperated with commodification or annihilated with destruction.
Yep. True
But
story.
yeah, but the funnel is towards the devotional with some lenience towards the abstract. But as soon as you start straddling the academic, as in questioning the underpinnings of the abstraction,
because that destroys system.
Or being enamored in context and responding to the immediacy of it.
Yes.
Also
that again,
leads you to...
You've pulled yourself out of systemic capture as far as the temperament goes. You are not welcome. Not welcome
and so
here.
it could be seen why in a civilized society the eye diagram it makes as much sense as it does, and why it leans towards the concrete as much as it does. It's not simply...
Right, with exceptions for pragmatic, like my own kind of temperamental tendency, because it's systemic too.
And less exceptions for
systemic.
academic, which is my own tendency, because if you'll notice, if I deviate outside the lines of protocol with everything I'm fucking talking about, which I always do, it's you're too smart for me, shut the fuck up.
Yep, I'm the only one of the few people on this earth who could.
Or
handle,
sorry,
who would accept you, Shenya?
Sorry, I have to. I have two responses. One, the "you're full of shit" is more common. Actually, it's just that I don't talk to people that would respond this way as often. So it's a kind of a biased sort of.
Usually, you're in better company.
I'm in better company, but they end up telling me to shut the fuck up because I'm apparently I'm above their heads.
In a different way. You're too high above us.
Another word of saying I don't want to think about it.
Very common, yes. So, side note, aren't we lucky as Portal Mountaineers to have found two of, kind of, let's call them rare side temperaments, but the abstract temperaments. Like, we are the more abstract thinkers rather than on the concrete side. We would be the ones to fucking spew out charts after charts after charts and tables and, like, endless discussion.
Props.
Talk and
props.
no action in some ways. But this is one
props.
thing.
That's why I'm saying props, because props aren't real things.
The
right?
book as an action is supposed to enact Portal Mountain itself as well. The book is supposed to help Portal Mountain exist.
That's the implicitness
right?
of our
action,
devotion.
concrete.
This is the implicit aspect of the devotional temperament, which we also cultivate. It's just that it comes out as we're only probably going to focus on our record of commitment as a matter of protocol. Right?
Sorry.
It's kind of like, it's convoluted.
I know it's weird, but I'm paying attention.
It's convoluted in that way. But it all ties up. Like there is no fundamental academia on the subject without a form of devotion to the subject. That's not a thing. And there's no.
Of course, yeah.
And there's no.
Right.
And there's no.
Even talking about it,
and there's
having
no
a conversation.
synthesis of the subject without synthesizing all of that into a hyperstition, which is part of the perception. So they all have to be in there one way or another, implicit, explicit, but they're all there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another comment on temperament, in that they're all there.
And you can see this hyperstitious gathering of it all. All the pieces keep gathering together. That's a real phenomenon. It's happening.
It's interesting that the other temperaments, with their lack of unification on that front, tend to be more piecemeal because of it. And I mean, we've seen that before, but it just makes it more pronounced. Said that way.
You mean temperaments as like a difficulty in having
As
different pieces, like
nobody,
it's not all together?
Being on the other end of the spectrum here, I can talk until I'm blue in the face about the hyperstition, but what I can't do is be like a shaman and make it real
for somebody and relay it to them.
In conversation.
Yeah. And that I think
unless their ingress and my unless their temperament and my ingress match. This is where we can touch on points of mastery, but grand mastery is out of reach so far.
This is a topic that should come up with temperament discussion in that any group of people is going to have a different varying ratio. And the relations between the temperaments are where the rubber hits the road. Anytime you have temperament to temperament contact and conversation, and something comes out of it, it's a real product.
So socially speaking, systemically speaking, plateau speaking,
it's like adding constraints. Every temperament you add is more constraints. And then your artifacts become so awesome that all temperaments can understand them.
So
potentially, that's ideally.
Yeah. So with that in mind, there's overreaching patterns. The first pattern is the tendency towards the middle of the eye. So regardless of situation, context, if you will, if the context is reduced to the human experience in and of itself, you have a tendency towards a tendency away from the two extremes of academia and perception.
Because they're kind of nowhere and nothing.
Exactly, they tend to be out there in the air.
And the inner temperaments,
with a push towards the pragmatic, if the occasion calls for it, or the devotional if another occasion calls for it. The pragmatic is if the life situation is difficult enough for there to be an inability to ignore it. But as soon as you have the capacity to ignore your pragmatic dealings, tending towards more and more devotional. So if I fulfill the ritual, the reward is going to get there. The dashboard will respond. So there is, as if you will, if as life
Interesting.
circumstances
Were you saying
improve,
in tough times, pragmatic type of structure to your reality can bring things back to where you have rest?
Orwell,
Maybe in your
Orwellian, pragmatic Orwellian.
So
So
bring that up again, because I don't know if are you saying yes or no.
Orwellian is when the rules of the systems are enforced on a personal level. So
Okay.
the system is concrete.
And Huxleyan, as you're going to bring up.
Huxleyan is the system is in your head. It's in your conscience. It's in your drugs. It's in your.
And Orwellian as the police state bashing you
police.
over the head. Huxleyan as drugs and information overload and everything
No,
feels good.
the reason I'm kind of switching it up and saying that that becomes the more concrete way of enforcement is because you have actual concrete individuals exerting violence upon each other,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the devotional becomes more concrete in that it's the individual beating themselves up over their failures, aka
I get you.
conscience.
So in other words, the
There's a bit of an
The-
inversion
the
and abstraction
first
and
one-
concrete there.
with the abstract you were relating to Orwell.
In this case, yes.
In that and that makes sense to me in a way that
The rules of paper come back onto you physically.
this is also like a more ideological battle. Like ideologically driven in the mind, in the way things should work. My way is right, your way is wrong. There's conflict.
Whereas on the flip
Very
side-
outer political, like outwardly expressing my way is right, our culture is right, conflict.
Yeah, and if you notice, there's like no room for the individual left over, which makes it a kind of a strange description of being concrete.
Yeah.
It doesn't exclude it from being strange. I'm not saying that.
Damn.
But you do get a flipped description if you talk about boots on the ground in a sense of who isn't doing the enforcement. In the Orwellian sense, it's an abstract system out there that keeps interrupting the individual for whatever.
Right.
Whereas in the Huxleyan model, it will be the opposite. It will be the individual themselves interrupting themselves in their conscious battle. And so in that sense, you have a more concrete.
I get it. And a lot of shame and guilt and all that pushing the individual.
So there's two ways to look at this particular problem. One has to do with.
And this is zeitgeist too. This is all zeitgeist. Right?
Well, this is also not. It's not just the fact that these concepts can flip so willy-nilly within the system allows them to perpetually hide underneath that system in basically being I'm not
what
that.
the causes are.
No, I'm not that. Look at situation X, Y, and Z.
Oh.
Clearly, it's on the concrete side.
So
And then if you go the opposite way, it's like, no, I'm not that. You clearly look at A, B, C. I'm clearly on the abstract side. And no matter how you twist the concept, the goalposts can move willy-nilly.
like that.
Yeah, red or blue, you're still running people over.
The trolley problem. You can pull the lever, but all it does is change the color from red to blue. Everybody still gets run over. For some reason, that's not. There it is. Doesn't show in that view.
Yeah, so from the perspective of enforcement, concrete lies with Orwellian and abstract lies with Huxleyan. But from the point of view of
Yeah, that's opposite of what we just talked about.
from the point of
So you can flip
view
it too.
of the actual bureaucracy, the bureaucratic part of it. So from the concrete side,
I see, yes.
from the concrete
Yes.
side, Orwellian is concrete.
You're jumping the horizon to describe it a different way.
Yeah, from the concrete side, Orwellian is your concrete, and Huxillian is your abstract. But from the abstract side of having a conscience and believing in things for yourself, you find that the enforcement is abstract, and the on the Orwellian side, and the enforcement is concrete on the Huxillian side. So it's like it's basically both at the same time in different perspectives.
So this is a very weird and interesting opportunity to describe the horizon and to talk about what we want to do to expand the horizon and bring in the neural operating system into this
So which horizon?
next area. The horizon over which we're flipping. So for Huxillian and Orwellian to look different, you flip over the horizon from abstract to concrete. Over the horizon, and then everything looks different, right? So this is part of that Hellonic model that we need to expand out and show the neural operating system.
So the discussion about modes of perception. Modes of perception are the way narrative takes shape from either being concrete, abstract, or metic.
Right. Yep. That's been a while.
So what you're saying is that beyond the horizon in the narrative that we cannot directly control. So the narrative we cannot directly control, but we have access to the levers of switching between concrete and abstract
Modes. Yep.
modes of perception, which allow us to see Huxillian and Orwellian in their
As one way and as
flipping-
another way.
as another way.
Mhm.
That is correct.
And this is freaking weird that you can see a whole system as one way and then switch your brain and see it as another way. Completely fucking opposite. Right?
Hold on. We've touched on this before. Opposites.
Opposites.
Left and right.
Correct. Yes, that's how, yep. Politics and all that
Pseudo-gender, monogender. These things are
being viewed from either side of
they're all
a horizon.
they're all shadows of the same
So
idea.
this is how politics divide against each other, left and right, is by having a perspective on either side of this horizon within this neural operating system model that we're presenting. On either
With
side, it
specific
looks different.
With specific
And this will
focuses on
fucking-
concrete and cosmology.
This will rock your brain and completely just annihilate you for a second when you realize that your political position, when you get a glimpse of that position from the other side, from the opposite, you get a glimpse of it and it's like, holy fuck, I'm being fed I thought they're being fed propaganda, but actually I'm being fed the fucking opposite of what they're getting. And I am the opposite of them. Right? You're on two different sides of the horizon.
In the sameness. In being opposite, you are basically the same.
Accepting the same system, but just on a flipped mirror side.
Yeah.
And this is how politics divide people. This is divide and conquer technology.
And so modes of perception is the underlying mechanism, with the Huxillian and Orwellian metaphors being the conceptual pictures that need to
right.
Frame it.
An inner control and an outer control. Who is dominating you?
Exactly, yeah. So Huxillian is the inner control element, the Orwellian is the outer control element, and both are bad guys depending on which mode of perception is being utilized in the effort of description of the one side versus the other side.
Mm-hmm. And they'll be pit against each other even though it's different enslavement modes. Like, we're the good ones. They're the bad slaves. We're the good slaves. Crazy.
They're the slaves. We are not the slaves.
We are not. We are liberated.
Now repeat after me. You are not a slave. I said repeat after
Okay, okay.
me.
I'm not. You are not a slave. No, I am not a.
I said obey.
And with that, I think we'll take a short break.
I'm actually okay.
Well,
For once.
speak for yourself. You've drained the main vein, and I have not. So with that, we'll be right back.
How does that
Let's hear your thoughts, man.
If we want to really push towards temperament as a subject to be reached at all,
Right, and we have to.
we need to establish a continuity from animism, from the discussion of animism,
Mm-hmm.
with complex adaptive systems, with grammatical capacities, and all that entails, to formulate the 4 layers to which temperaments are isomorphic.
How does complex adaptive systems? How does that link to the neural operating system?
The neural
NOS.
operating system is a complex adaptive system whose layers are defined by the
Right.
stack of the neural operating system.
Correct. And so this is the neural operating system is a special complex adaptive system that within it keeps track in a virtual simulation type of way with complex adaptive systems.
It keeps a track of a representation of its internal environment and external environment to
Right.
some degree.
Right. So we're just saying it's self-same here. Whatever it's modeling, it models itself that same way.
It's the thing behind the membrane.
The shelter.
Membrane shelter. Complex adaptive system uses the word membrane because a membrane is the point at which protocols enter and exit.
Right.
With whatever happens past the
Yeah,
past the
right.
membrane is a black box.
Right. Yeah, you're reminding me of Scepter and all that.
Yeah, that's what it's
the
about.
holo team. Just having this model, complex adaptive systemic model, and the social operating system within the vision of Holo and Scepter and all that is of this Lego building blocks.
So the discussion
right?
of
You're building the
grammar-
social with Lego blocks.
So the discussion of grammar is the discussion of the mechanism by which layers are formulated,
Right.
and the discussion of protocol establishes where membranes are.
Where they are? What do you mean
Right.
where they are?
So when it comes to say sound,
Like how things relate, that's what we mean where they are.
yeah,
How they're related.
when it comes to sound, if you're deaf, right?
Uh-huh.
The protocols involving in tone, the protocols involving intonations, anything to
Right.
do with that,
Of course, senses,
are gone.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Very
So
different.
there's a membrane that is not sensitive to these things, and there's membranes that are. Membrane basically being an entry point of something or an exit point of something.
Right. So instead of specific auditory articulations, you're having, for example, hand motion movement articulations, and that's the basis.
Yeah,
That's your
it's
medium.
a visual membrane.
Yeah. Right. Membrane, yep, through visual. Emergent off visual, heavily off visual.
Yeah, so membrane is in this sense is not just skin, it's also visual perception, it's also tactile perception, auditory perception, the field of view, the field of
Mhm.
sound that you have access
Yep,
to.
I get it.
That's the membrane.
Complex adaptive systems.
Yeah, what we need to do.
So how does this go into the 4 layers?
So the reason it goes into the 4 layers is because temperament lines up with specific layers found in neural
Yeah,
operating
no,
system,
I get that.
which are implicitly utilized,
Okay,
not
wait.
necessarily explicitly.
Complex adaptive systems, this is a Hellonic model we're using. So that's how it relates. We know how the Hellonic model relates to temperament, the 4 layers, obviously. But complex adaptive systems, we have to talk about something like environment, organism, NOS, SOS.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you build complex
So
adaptive systems, right?
so that's one complex adaptive system in which another complex adaptive system is found, which also carries in it a model, an isomorphic
Ideally.
isomorphism towards the very same temperaments that model the complex adaptive system.
Mm-hmm.
So to get the discussion going,
Damn. Yep.
to get the discussion going, the first complex adaptive system we have is the Hellonic Model itself, which consists of the environment in which the organism is found, which is running a neural operating system, which is running a social operating system that unifies both the environment and the organism and copies of said organism as one single quote-unquote
Right, the social.
higher layer environment.
Beyond the horizon,
Be-
that which we can't directly experience. It's the
co-
other people out there.
It's completing the
we
loop.
We don't experience other people.
It's completing the loop. Okay.
Yep.
And so within that organization, we find the organization for the neural operating system itself that is managing all of these inner outer reflections of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also constructed as a complex adaptive stack out of the very same materials out of which the organism is also constructed.
I think that you're probably lining up a chain of stacks and emergencies,
I'm
nestings that we need to write this down right now. Okay, just go back to the start and tell me what's the first thing. So was it the Hellonic, the environment organism? Was that the first one we started with?
Animism is first.
The natural hierarchy?
Animism and the idea of stacks itself. Right?
Stacks. Okay. And then we got into...
Then the most relevant stack, that of
natural,
the body.
The natural...
So we're trying to
natural hierarchy?
We're trying to kill the disconnect between mind and body, correct? Let's say if we're
It's already happened.
No, but let's say that that's our purpose in this discussion, to kill that discrepancy.
Yes.
So,
right.
The body is the environment, organism, neural OS, social OS stack.
Right.
It's captured in that complex adaptive system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we zoom into the neural OS, and we discover that it is, too, another form of a complex adaptive system, not necessarily completely mirroring the first one,
yes.
conceptually.
Right.
It's conceptually mirroring how it needs to work.
Right. So.
But it's found within.
And it's
it's
imperfect.
OS and the organism itself, and made out of the same materials that the environment is made out of. So it's the same thing, but it's not the same description.
We have gone from animism here now, and we've talked about the natural hierarchy. We keep bringing that up.
Animism,
environment,
natural
organism.
Hierarchy. Yes, animism, natural hierarchy.
NH. Okay, and
then the neural OS, complex adaptive system itself, within the neural.
And within that, there is the areas of concern. Or what?
So no, the neural
Because there's
operating
natural
system.
concerns.
The neural operating system is a given, but the content it's operating on, to be isomorphic, to continue the pattern, the content now that it has to be working through has to be reflective of the natural
AOC,
concerns.
which is reflective of natural concerns.
The natural concerns is the information brought to the
NC,
mind by the body.
Okay, so we have an interesting chain there. Chain of stacks.
The body presents information to the mind. That information is the natural concerns. The mind does not take that information as is. It utilizes that information in its free formulation of the areas of concern.
In a form of a narrative of what the body object needs to do in its environment to do stuff.
And those take on the articulation of hygiene, of expelling, nutrition of intaking,
Oh yeah.
the balance of the two, and the perpetuation of this balance through time. So maintenance could be thought of as the moment. Society is the dream.
Interesting.
And if you maintain the isomorphism,
You mean
the balance,
community, right?
Yes, sorry. So community.
Community dream.
So if you maintain the intake and the expulsion over time, perpetually, you can be described as fit. It's the same kind of fitness that evolution places on a species.
Yeah.
If you're not fit for the environment,
Yeah.
you're not going to survive in it. It doesn't matter how strong you are. Then, like, it has to be a balance, a dance between the two.
So this definition or description of fitness really makes me think about the strange loop and being concerned back from which you emerged.
Right.
A focus back on self-stack. Fitness is of itself
Because
fit to do itself.
because you can maintain balance with hygiene and
And that's the starting point, because there's so
with
many other
hygiene-
things to
with
be
hygiene
fit
and
for.
nutrition, but be completely unfit when it comes to the moment to moment to moment to moment to moment composition.
Hmm.
So,
in a
so
non-membership situation.
So even though you yourself were fit, it could be that you were the cannibalistic ant walking on top of the death circle, feeding off of the dying corpses, and sure, you're alive,
Right.
but the system is dying.
And your line will end.
So that's the discrepancy right there. So the maintenance can be thought of as the moment by moment element, but the stitching of moments together, that isomorphism, the narratological one, will actually also play a role in reification, because reification, if you remember, plays dual role. One in the horizontal resonance,
And a vertical.
but the vertical stuff, if the resonance makes sense, drink bleach, sure, it makes sense as an instruction, but it destroys the body that does that,
Yeah.
then you have a
The
different
vertical
outcome.
has been destroyed, but the horizontal made sense.
Right.
At some layer, there was
There's
communication.
the dysmorphism
Right.
that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. True.
It's all very intricately connected, which is why it's so difficult to tease apart.
For sure. And context isn't just one thing that you tell somebody.
Yeah, I think part of our mental inability and our language specifically is got a shortcoming with,
Yep.
is the inability to distinguish between permanent and impermanent concepts. Because the way English portrays things to be, it portrays them to be in a state of abstract perpetuity.
Perpetuity. Right.
Which is great for business. Sucks for everything else.
Yeah, it's not even a part of the language or the culture or the way that words are used. The idea that objects go.
Disappears.
Sure,
back.
they're here now, and yes, they're here now, but they don't go. Everything seems to be loaded up into the operating system and then never unloaded.
The Holy Grail is the it's a type of commodity. A commodity with shelf life.
One with obsolescence built into it.
No, other way around. the holy grail in systemic thinking is the impermanence of commodities. So
Impermanence.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not,
what I
I'm not
meant.
talking about marketing. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
the actual function. Of
That's
the
what I
market.
meant by obsolescence built in.
It's more like a myth. The myth of the market is to create goods that are
Eternally satisfying. That'll never happen. Is that the myth,
long
though?
living. There's a word
But
for this.
that's not like everybody knows it's not.
Non-perishable.
Everybody knows it's not like that. Everything is very perishable, intentionally perishable, even.
Yeah,
So that you have to buy it again.
None of this is the point I'm driving
Okay.
at, though.
Okay. That's what it made me think.
Underneath the market, to make the market itself look good, the goal is to create goods that are non-perishable.
But where do you even find that?
That's the excuse the market has for its existence, is to fabricate for our needs of survival in such a manner that it's no longer an issue.
Yeah. So if you're a government, honest government,
that it's undermined.
If you're an honest
is
government, you want to provide plateaus that seem permanent, and that you just never, for all of civilization, you never worry about this plateau again.
Yeah, you solve the problem. The problem is solved.
It doesn't frickin' happen that way. Why?
Well, because they're solved materially, and materials decay.
Mm-hmm. And the plateau was just a promise.
Interested that you say that, because what do politicians have? A plateau of promises.
Yep. Platform.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Platform.
Plateau.
Very similar.
Platform. Gee, what's the difference?
I'm not too surprised by this.
But and you notice how much it limits what the platform can be based on the plateau that is.
Right. Of course.
You can only play into the plateau. You can never
The
actually
political
have
platform.
you can never actually have a platform that is apart from the plateau.
Politically speaking, no.
Well, the reason is because the platform is made out of the plateau.
Mm-hmm. They can never promise anything outside of that, in other words.
Basically.
But the politician cannot promise you.
Which is why the stance is never about
They can never.
there's a resolution to the system,
They can never offer a
but
resolution.
only resolutions to problems within the system.
Within the context of it. The Band-Aid ball, ever fixing and fixing and fixing.
Racism is the problem. Not the cultural underpinning, not the history behind it, not the complete clusterfuck of class wars that have happened since the point of slavery. No.
Don't make us go into that topic, because we'll do it for like a whole hour.
Damn it.
We'll do it.
And I didn't even want to.
We're only 1 hour into this session, by the way, and we have about 2 hours left. So,
I'm speaking okay with the microphone, right?
yeah, no, it's pointed directionally this way. You're probably quiet, if anything. I'm probably way too loud as far as the mix, but you can shout towards it if but it's directional. Yep. So we're actually still kind of in the recap phase a little bit about the section of the book, which we call guild dynamics.
We were straddling the point of making a run for temperament.
Connecting temperament and coherence, right? So
The
a
neural
run
OS.
for temperament, and temperament because we need to introduce as well the neural OS. Yes, it's all related. And we can't continue on from self to social until we do this.
That will bridge the gap as to why we say that the neural OS is running a social OS. Basically, that's the hamper right there, in that we can't justify that transition without explaining, at least partially, as to what the underlying principles of the transitions are.
Mm-hmm.
So the neural OS begins, as you might imagine, in the physical realm of molecules, atoms, particles, whatever the fuck you want to call them. The things that scientists tell us are real.
Right.
And we know, insofar through, various scientific inquiries into the biology of things, we have determined that the nervous system is a specialized network of cells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, right there, you can see layering that we're utilizing verbatim is the fact that there are particles, the fact that there are cells, there are
Mm-hmm.
macromolecules involved. We call them DNA and proteins and the like. So cells, special types of cells which create neural nets, neural networks. The neural networks exhibiting patterns.
So I
signals.
love this, and I think the book should go into this very briefly, like just to give this chart.
Well,
this,
that's what I'm doing.
This chart.
Go into it
Because
briefly.
it gives such a... This is a connection for anybody who's kind of like scientismically oriented to physical matter.
That's
and
what
all
I'm
that.
going for. We're talking
This is
about
our
nerves.
connection,
We're
right?
talking about nerves. Then now you need to step outside the realm of pure science.
And
Because
we
this
show
is
the
a-
ultimate horizon here as well between... where is it?
There's a number here.
When signal begins. The nerve is a physical thing that people can look at it scientifically and say, oh, the nerve
Is firing.
fired.
Yeah.
It fired. Okay, great. Yes, we can put a probe on it and say that nerve fired. But once you go into collection of nerves firing together,
Right.
you can't fucking keep track of that. You need a probe at every goddamn node, at every nerve, every point in the brain. And it's totally unique to itself.
Not to mention that each signal would be unique to the specific brain that it's in.
Crazy.
I mean,
Yes.
to an extent.
You would have to study. You can't just study one brain and be like, okay, this brain died. We're going to start studying the next one now. And just carry on.
Right, you got to
Where
reinterpret
where you left
You got to
off.
reinterpret
Everything has to be redone from the start because we all get born and experience birth from the start. Our neural...
The sequence of experiences is different for everybody.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's a little crazy, but
So yeah, you're right in that we see our first breakaway from the concrete nerves of firing to what is conceptualized as a signal, which would amount to nerves firing in a pattern, which is now becomes a much more arbitrary distinction when it comes to utilizing that pattern in different contexts. This pattern could mean one thing in one context, aka within one
yeah.
ongoing pattern, but it could also mean something else in a different ongoing pattern.
Yeah, it's not even to say that we couldn't hook up a fucking sensor to every single nerve and figure out.
But even if you did,
create a map.
Even if you did, imagine what it would be like to use that reading and to try to understand
to make sense
a
of it
metaphor
outside of its own
but
context.
but imagine like thoughts are metaphorical in general.
Mm-hmm.
They are like something.
Right.
They're
Yes.
not the something.
Correct.
And so the likeness of something to one network is not the same as for another.
So you would
for
have to go
one.
back to the early years of formation
But
of the
you
network
have another problem.
and find out the archetypal experiences that they gained and try to link them up somehow between the maps.
And then you have another problem.
Impossible.
A
Damn near.
similar likeness does not amount to a similar thought.
Doesn't mean it's the same, yeah.
To the like a
And
signal appear in two different places.
it's like the butterfly effect. You'll always have this one little experience that shifted the whole network into a whole different way. And now they're different completely because of the butterfly effect out of one experience. Right?
And
completely different.
Conversely, you have the opposite effect of convergence.
Right.
It's
which,
even
which
more,
we can expect and we can try to...
So this is where you have different signals that in general would have different representations of different
and
things.
Unexpected out of nowhere, it converges.
Converges onto being a single artifact of the same system.
Evolutionary niches.
Body plans conversion on the same
just boom,
out
of nowhere. Wouldn't even expect it.
You would expect it from the pressures.
Right.
But you need to understand that.
I mean, you wouldn't even calculate it. That's what I mean. You wouldn't calculate that was about to happen. You wouldn't fucking know.
You would have to basically realize that the species and the niche coexist in concert in a way that says you can't recognize that the species exists in the niche without recognizing the niche, and you can't recognize the niche without recognizing the species that exist in it in the first place. And so it's a kind of a mutual self-reflected element of the environment of the organism.
You're only identifying that section of the environment in that way because of the species that deals with it, that depends on it. It's the only reason it makes sense. Shall we take a quick break,
Sure.
if you don't mind? I will be on my way down the stairs. Been good so far. Look at our junk. I have pants. I put my pants on today by myself. Representing. Yeah, buddy. All right. So we'll take a quick break, be back, and then we'll just carry on. I feel like we're still in like the first sections of what we outlined to begin with.
I didn't get through the operating system. If I get through the operating system, we can get to the temperaments.
Okay, let's do it. Let's drive to the temperaments. Gentlemen, thank you all for being with us. You feel better, buddy?
Fuck yeah.
All right, we're recording again. By the way. No. Well, we were, but we'll be back. Let's just get back to, let's talk casual and make a whole bunch of noise and all that. You know. Get all that out. Oh yeah. Oh damn. Well, it's break time, ladies and gents. And so you're talking about moving into the neural operating system.
Yeah. So
to talk about it, this Hellonic model, and what we just walked through, this layers of the NOS, right?
Yeah. So the physicality of the model ends essentially with the nervous.
The NOS.
Sorry. The physicality of the model there ends with the nervous system, in which nerves are firing. Right. That's like the last observation we can make.
Scientifically, materialistically.
Yeah. Observationally.
What can be isomorphically quantified?
The fact that
correct?
Yes. So
what can be isomorphically quantified? Past that line, you cannot isomorphically quantify.
No.
It becomes something that's no, you can't.
Qualify, yes. Quantify, no. So you cannot quantify anything past the firing of a nerve system, because what you'll always see is nerve
fires. Fire, yes.
And it won't tell you
how many other nerves fired at the same time and what it means.
Yeah.
And then how many fired, and then how many fired, and which ones. And
Like,
what does all that fucking mean?
Well, it can tell you some things about that. Some nerves fire because the fingers
And-
touched,
and you'll find regions of the brain.
or light is reached.
Regions of the
optic
brain
nerve.
which fire in cascade because of something.
Yeah, you can do that.
You can do external stimuli and say, okay, this region seems
But that
to be.
point about meaning is lost. That's correct.
There is some meaning to that, but it's.
There's meaning in the mechanics, sure. What I'm saying is that you can't discern the meaning of a neuron firing without some kind of concentrated effort of understanding the context in which it fired.
What other ones fired too?
Which that's the horizon.
Right.
Because in an effort to understand a single neuron firing in a context, you have to bring an abstract model to represent the concert of fire.
Which kind of linearly walks you through it in a rational way, but it's only ever an approximation. It's never the actual, all the things that happened.
Right. Which is why all that does is bring us to the next layer of the signal. So we can now talk about context in which something is firing, but we now need to understand a greater context in which why is such a pattern is being fired in a concentration of the rest of the patterns. Right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, context.
So now again we're finding these now signals rather than firings being repeated in different contexts, which we refer to as symbols. Signals firing in patterns. So nerves firing in patterns give us signals. Signals firing in patterns give us symbols.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're stepping up. This is complex adaptive systems again.
Right. And now we're getting to a point of where, okay, we need to bottom out. We can't keep going. Like, we can't be this reductive. Like, if the system is just this reductive about it, it's not going to actually get into any kind of measurable meaning or anything meaningful as the word meaning to begin with.
Right, and this is again to introduce the context and to fix the great schism, the mind-body disconnect. This is to bring back, okay, yes, we need to think about the body.
Yeah.
The
So,
context.
so observationally, we have nerves firing. Conceptually, we have signals firing, and we need to bring patterns of signals into some sort of meaningful delineation as to, like, okay, now that's all that's been happening. Where's the reactionary part to it, right? And this is where we get into the articulation of artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
Artifact is a composition of symbols turned into specific signs. Now, the distinction between symbol and sign is that a symbol can stand in for multiple signs, right? Of the letter A can stand in for multiple sounds.
Well, you can see somebody wearing red, and maybe it means they're all about, Christmas and Jesus, or maybe it means they're like some like death cult.
Or maybe they're a British military.
So you see red shirt, and it's still the same firings, like multiple firings.
Yeah, meanings. So the artifact solidifies that meaning into a single direction.
Mm-hmm.
So
multiple artifacts you could have for each situation. In context, an artifact is called up. This one or that one.
Yeah,
it's Christmas, so you know that it's this context. The red shirt means this.
Red is a symbol. Light's symbol, but a red light in traffic are signs, and the entire construct is an artifact. A prefabricated
symbol.
Prefabricated.
When you say sign,
picture.
there is no sign here except for signal.
So sign, the idea of a transformation of symbol to sign is like the idea of transformation of a word appearing on its own, which is the symbol, and a word appearing in a sentence,
Or even a color. If it's,
Yeah,
if it's
but-
meaningful.
so language is easier to understand here. A word appearing on its own is just is sort of like begging to be plugged into something.
Hmm.
That is the quote unquote symbolic form of the same thing.
Right.
The signalic form of the same thing is having that word plugged into a specific sentence.
Now, are you coming back down to signal and vestigial when
Yes,
you say
this is all
signalic?
within the signal layer. Signal and sign are two sides of
Yeah.
the same layer.
I was kind of suspecting that.
It was always a tangential
but it
discussion in
seems a
general.
bit-
But it's important to understand that a symbol can appear as different signs depending on which
So-
artifact it's in.
So because meaning is being built up from bottom to top, in context, the context of the meaning,
Sort of.
so many signals.
It's not.
That's why you're.
It's not. Meaning is only starting to be.
No, but
meaning materializes in the artifact.
I hope you. So I didn't say it right, but I was trying to interpret what you were saying as. So symbol and signal, signalic, the sign being.
Signal is a reference to an articulation of a concert of nerve firings
But like
themselves.
the idea is giving you exact context, so it can be either one or the other. It can be many different signals can make the same
right. It's either
symbol.
It's either
to,
this
to
pattern
have a
or
totally
that
different
pattern.
symbol like context.
So this is
You
where
think,
this
I
is,
think we just connected.
this
there,
is
Hope.
where it gets
I
tricky.
think you got what I was
This
trying
is where
to
it
get.
gets tricky.
Okay.
A signal is differentiated from a different signal if you have different nerves firing or nerves firing in a different pattern.
Even outside of the normal pattern.
So that's how you can say
Just suddenly
this
associating.
is not the same signal as that. But in order to create a symbol, you're not grounded into a single signal set. So this combination of signals
Right, you couldn't
can
be.
articulate
By definition, you
can
couldn't
articulate this
be.
symbol.
That would destroy the object.
It's also by definition of how the neural network works. You don't have to have the same inputs to generate the same output.
This is how it layers emergent just kind of like start showing up shapes and things in isomorphism with what's going
Right.
on below.
So not only is a signal an articulation of a particular signal pattern, it could also be an articulation of multiple signal patterns, all of which result in the self-same symbol. But the fact that there are being
Right.
different patterns underneath could affect which other symbols they appear alongside with.
We had this discussion a long time ago about labels and it was with like regards to memeplexes and putting a label on top of it. It was a memeplex chart, and it was like label, like this is what this side channel almost of giving a label a name to a certain pattern of expressions.
So this is the same pattern reiterated, but in the active sense. So here, it's more like in the reactive sense. The neural system is simply reactive to itself. But once it constructs complete artifacts out of the signals,
Mm-hmm. Oh no! We're coming back to this. It's okay. You don't have to hold it.
I'm not. I stabilize it pretty quickly.
Don't want to make anybody sick.
So what I'm saying is that as soon as you all the different artifacts are constructed out of the symbols become signs within each artifact. And the key here is that not again.
Wait, are you skipping up another layer higher now? You just continued on.
We went from
I didn't
symbol.
catch on to that.
We went from symbol.
Let's just
signal to symbol.
quickly.
The first thing I said is that in order to get a symbol, articulated in a neural network, you
Mm-hmm.
can have a variety of different signal combinations to do it. Right? So you don't have to have a one-to-one match.
Yeah.
This pattern of signals
Right.
could do it, this pattern of signals could do
Mhm.
it, that pattern of
And
signals
that's the
could do
point of it, is that you have this emergent layer, something is resonating and just lighting up and with whatever pattern is
it.
going on.
Now, caveat. Because these different patterns of signals are different, the combination of symbols that appear in concert to each other will also be different. Right? So you can have the same symbol appearing in different artifacts, but the artifacts are very different from each other. So, what that means is that
Mhm.
each time a symbol...
You're just saying carry on this pattern again up one more layer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So each time a symbol appears in an artifact, we call it a sign. It may be written the same way, but it's pronounced a different way here, it's pronounced a different way there, it's pronounced a different, so on and so forth. You know, like that kind of thing.
And the artifact is something directly experienced in context around you. Artifacts.
No, the flip side of the artifact is the meme, is that experience. That's the quality.
Yeah. No, I meant.
So
I
once,
meant,
so once you've constructed the program,
this is like the
it
limit
needs
of
to run.
this is the limit of context. The body coming up to.
and this is why
the
it's a
mind.
horizon. Here, it's inert. It's reactionary. It's not the activated program. It's the built program. That is the resultant of the active program. And now you flip the switch and activate the program and see that run through. That's the next moment, if you will. Right? Conceptually, it looks like you're looking from the bottom, and then you flip upside down. And
I'm
look
thinking
from the
back
top, and
to
it's
our
now running.
most recent discussion about flipping over the horizon.
That's the
Like,
horizon.
here we go again.
So artifacts are not perceived. They cannot be
You're right.
perceived.
So interesting to note, after guess how many layers, we've encountered this exact same horizon flipping.
3.
First, it was between nerve. Yes, correct. Between nerve and signal, we had the horizon. 3 more: signal, symbol, artifact. 3.
Oh, gee. Haven't
Now we
I
have the
mentioned this
horizon again. Artifact, meme, type. Wait. Artifact.
before? Meme type object.
Yeah, meme. Yeah, meme type object.
Because I've just described artifacts
Right.
as the composition of the
Yeah.
symbols
So you
made signs.
Right. See. So that's interesting to note that the Hellonic model applies yet again here, and we see something just kind of stacking, stacking
we've,
along.
We've actually have drawn horizons between
Like
here.
have we ever
here,
really well described
and here.
the stacking of these these structures?
At the beginning, yeah, because we started from there.
But yes, I know we did. But then it's like, when do you bring it up again? And we have to keep cycling and
I think-
reiterating and pulling it all together and
Well,
get it
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's,
anyway.
that's great to note. I think the triad thing, and we've not even like so long ago, but in our developments, doing this thing where we.
The horizon presents a paradox, by the way.
Fuck, I forgot. Of course, it's a paradox.
So there's a paradox because if you leave it as is, what you get is a clusterfuck of sensory input, and yeah, I guess the only way you can really describe it is extreme autism.
Anytime that we are aware when we encounter.
I think that's an important note to make because if you look at autistic
when we encounter a
breakdowns,
horizon, we
it's about
must
that.
account for it. Every horizon we encounter, we must deal with it. There must be a language learned in order to speak that
Reify,
horizon.
because it needs a reification.
Every horizon presents that exact problem. And so in this stack, we have how many? Lots
3.
of. Like, we need to know about all 3.
With 3. One is between the material and the immaterial. Interestingly, that's
And
the way
that's,
the Buddhists describe the realms.
Pretty interesting.
Material and the immaterial. And the secondary is between the immaterial and the
Are you talking about the divas again? And all that? The 31 planes of
Yeah.
existence?
yeah, the material and the immaterial, they're easy to grasp. So, or a fine material, if you will. But then there is also the material, fine material, and immaterial.
So,
Fine material would be your signals that you can still interpret via machinery, but you need a heavy dose of interpretation. Symbol, same. Artifact, even more of the same. And then the immaterial is basically the realm of fucking...
let go to some extent.
Yeah. Where you get infinite space, infinite consciousness, infinite...
Unbind, the real unbinding kind of realms of unbinding. Isn't it isn't it a gradient?
Pointers towards the unbinding. However, if you get stuck on them, very binding.
That has to be known at every single level, quote unquote.
Yeah. So I just don't want to say unbinding.
It's almost humorous.
It's very fucking humorous.
How
Most people that realize it for the first time, their reaction is laughter. Yeah, where's my letter, bitch?
I didn't take it.
Yeah, you did. You lit
You did it.
You lit the thing.
Come on, lift some paper, man. Do some work around here.
All right. So, conundrum, meme. So we've gotten to a point of where we have a collection of artifacts primed to run together. They are each other's context. Right?
What, like everything?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Specifically, what are you talking about? Where are we at? right
Memes. The layer
Memes?
Yeah, so we got
so
to
we're
artifact and we're looking
Don't
at
just
it this
ambush
way.
me like that, man.
We're looking at it this way. Now we flipped the fucking horizon over,
Yeah, so
and
meme
now it's
is a
running.
flip. And interestingly, this is the point at which we join the neural operating system, which has been highlighted here already in a box. Right?
Actually, the neural operating system does not involve the shit.
Correct. But you get the point.
When you talk to yourself, it's your social operating system. Like when you verbalize thoughts.
There, I did it.
No, I want it to be actually clear. Like verbalizing thoughts to yourself is part of the social operating system. That's not what we're talking about when we're discussing the neural operating system.
So this is one of the hurdles that's probably most difficult for anybody to understand immediately, is the fact that the processes within the neural operating system, your self-neurology,
they're not the obvious processes.
just because... So it's a distinction between self and social again, I think. Like what we've been talking about recently. How do you differentiate the two?
Our distinction.
And so people think social operating system means out there, non-local. But in the model that we're talking about,
self-talk.
it's something that is very local, and therefore, because it's included in the kernel of the thing, therefore it can emerge outwards and outwards.
So yeah,
This is what's always missing,
in
this kind of thing.
In the parlance of guild dynamics, the very first proximity guild is the loop back, which is a complete guild unto itself, which is the person themselves in a concrete sense, right? So this speaks to that. So guild dynamics is designed to tackle the social operating system in its internal operations, whereas the standard model of memetics is designed to tackle aspects of the neural operating system as it is. Right, that's like the main, if you will, division.
That's news to me, man.
That was always
No,
been
I'm
the
just
case.
kidding. I just love to hear these reiterations of something you probably haven't said for years. and was said way long ago, so it's awesome.
Yeah, no, that is
That's all I'm
that
pointing
is an
at.
old concept for sure.
Yeah.
So
Heck yeah.
so with that in mind, we're seeing one of the reasons why they're laid out this way, in that the concept of self-talk, the concept of thinking about yourself to yourself, and conceptualizing and going through all these kinds of motions. What is normally would be thought of your internal neurological self talking to yourself, not the social self, is actually what we're saying is the social self, because one of the primary reasons this is the case is because the language that is being used is entirely learned from the outside, and so conceptual articulation that is happening is not is mostly not self-derived. Maybe it's a particular combination of conceptualization is unique to that moment, right? But the entire linguistic apparatus, if you will, is coming from the outside. It's coming from the social construction of abstracted, articulated thought. So, for me to express my feelings, I first of all have to understand what feelings are called, which feelings is which, and then re-articulated that back in social terms to myself if I'm trying to self-soothe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because of that externality of,
Right.
of interpretation.
Yeah, so it's not like you need to have other people around you just to experience the social. It experiences to ourselves. We don't need anybody else.
It is a social experience.
We'll run the whole
Simulation.
thinking what that person thinks of me, what that person thinks, and who this is what, and what's going on.
Yeah, and this level,
Even if you're alone.
and this level of articulation is social.
Right.
That is not
so
a
this is
discussion
a
of- that
this
is
is
not a
a
discussion
great
of-
meditation.
That is not a discussion of what does this sense impression fit into for my next reaction, see that system,
Mhm,
if
the
you
connection,
will,
the loop,
that system, if you will, is stuck in the moment. It's stuck there. So the neural operating system is effectively the moment that we're discussing to begin with, right? And the social elements that it's running
Right, I see.
about is the dream.
Yes. Correct. And the dream can go very wrong all the time, and
Easily.
but it can also be turned back into itself and do this loop thing. There you
Well,
are.
if we're talking about entropic principles, then there's some resilience to it, but if you poke it enough, it'll get some fucking cancer.
Of course. Right.
Hence, social DNA is important. Hence, guild dynamic is
Yeah,
important.
exactly. To heal the organism again, over and over again. From every direction, it just keeps healing
Why
itself.
the natural concerns serve as the DNA for the.
That's so good, man. It's so good. So good.
Man, I don't know how many more ways I can explain it until I just like, how is it not that?
Well,
How do you see something else?
no, I get it, man. Language. Being able to communicate.
I don't appreciate enough the lack, I guess, of other people's ability to jump from word to word to word to word like it's happening for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's
I've noticed that, and you're very fluid in that somebody can tell you anything. Somebody can walk up to you and say any set of words very fast. Boom. And you'll respond right away because it made an impression, and like you're not in there interpreting narrative and like other weird things.
No, I'm
You're just
already
like
at-
the
I'm
words just cascaded into my brain, and now here you go. That's the academic that I think is a rare side of society.
I reframe everything. Yeah, that's how
Just,
somebody else.
it makes
somebody
sense
else,
to you though.
somebody
Whatever
else
those
said that to me.
like word, it made sense to you, and now you with 100% confidence just related it through your brain and said, okay, this is what I think about this subject based on what you just told me, and it's like boom.
So this is why.
No other temperament does that.
This is why I feel I can speak about Grand Mastery without being near Grand Mastery myself.
And
Because
don't mistake him for some kind of
that-
self-grandeur.
No.
Just for
that's what I'm saying.
presuming,
That's what I'm saying.
presuming to know what it's about. Even
Hence, I'm saying.
how dare you know what
But
Grandmaster is?
what did I define Grandmaster to be? Grandmaster is to be able to take
It was
any
through the temperaments.
ingress, regardless of your
Temperament, ingress.
temperament. Whatever temperament you are, you can take on
To be able to
another
jump over.
ingress.
Ingress, yep.
And this is the clue that drove me to that
Yep.
conclusion, in that I can take information and reframe it.
And we talked about this today in some way, in that maybe a guest that I brought to Porter Mountain recently, whatever, had just been given in the wrong temperament, the wrong ingress. Maybe
Yeah.
they wanted more academic, and I gave them more pragmatic, and just expected it to click, and it didn't, and then they, gone.
It was
they
a
left.
mix of academic with devotional. When you come across somebody who's in a tradition,
Yeah,
there's
like
an element of
I'm not there, man.
and the only reason I'm able to bridge myself to the devotional temperament is my affinity towards the traditional Theravada stuff. That's how I understand
we
it.
both, though, being on the kind of abstract side, have had to go towards the concrete, towards the devotional. And I think both of you and I have, to some degree, had success in understanding. Like, remember that that one dude we went and saw at like the having breakfasts or whatever,
I know what you're talking about,
and
yeah.
we're like, he spoke about
but he
like,
couldn't relate to us. At the end of the day, what was funny about that interaction is that when we're like, oh wow, you really spoke to us in this way, he basically did a blank,
Yeah.
blank,
too bad.
blank.
But,
Okay.
like, it really, like, I understood what you're saying, but
Yeah, thanks for moving us, I guess, in the right direction.
yeah. Well, no, we don't all have to know everything what happened.
Yeah.
That's
But
an
if you
experience
encounter-
on his
but,
part.
But when you encounter a person who is devotional, undermining that devotion is not a good idea.
Yeah, and I think I know what you're saying and agree. So,
But speaking the language, being able to speak the language is another matter.
if we could say something better, like, you inspired me, man. I really felt what you were saying.
No,
you know?
we should have
Like,
no,
or whatever.
We
like,
had to. No, we didn't read the room. We were speaking from our Portal Mountain sort of mindset, but you gotta like tone down back to Christian Christian lingo.
This was even before the Telegram chat, though. So gotta appreciate. I think so.
It might have been at
Yeah.
the beginning of it.
Yeah. This is one of the first, like, we discovered devotional temperament in that moment. Like, this guy taught us what devotional is. And we were, like, trying to thank him so hard, I guess. And it's like...
Yeah, that fell flat on its face.
But, like...
By the way, I'm moving because that heater is, like, killing me.
Is it too hot?
It's not too hot. It's just...
It is pretty crazy, man. Well, that's the thing. You just turn it away. It's a radiant heat. It's very, very crazy.
It's just I'm too ginger.
No, I'm feeling it, too. I think I got a suntan from it. Suntan. So how did you like your cracked back?
Yeah,
Feel good now?
Maybe do another one before we leave. Oh, that was actually fucking really good.
Well,
It
so
was
as you instructed, I grabbed you in the bear hug, right? And felt like a drop, like I just lifted you and drop a little bit. But then, like,
But
I
avoid the
knew
hump.
there was one more.
But
And
just
I was like, boom. It just dropped and
you
there's
you
like
just need
another
to
crack.
avoid humping and...
Well, you know. There's no full body contact. No full body contact.
All sex
Yeah, that's
is
good. You should go to
gay.
Cairo if you want to.
I'm going to eventually.
Yeah. So I
Once
just
I'm broken
referred you
enough.
to a one that I know, and I trust that you trust me on that.
Yeah.
You would like him very much. So far as I reckon, you got about an hour
All right.
left on.
So we've done the.
Which is a lot. An hour is a lot, but still, we're kind of. Are we lagging? We're just.
No, we've done,
We keep coming back
got,
to the horizon thing, which is awesome.
We got to the point. Sorry, I'm gonna stand again.
You may, and I may take a break actually right away because I might need to take a leak.
All right. So when you come back, we're going to move off of flipping to the from below the horizon to above the horizon,
This flipping thing.
and
man.
activating the program that we've just written in terms of signs, signals, symbols,
Mhm.
artifacts. We put artifacts together, we flip them around, we let them
And-
run. They are now memes.
Yeah. So it isn't like the quest artifacts are like the archetypal solution of fixing of this problem that we keep doing, of the horizon and flipping over it, and reifying things when they shouldn't be and all that.
At this stage,
Can we bring the
we're-
quest artifacts
not yet,
into
not
this?
Yet, not yet.
Damn.
Not yet because we're at a point of where we're simply laying down the mechanics of it.
Right.
Still.
It's not ready for
we're not-
mythological
So we're
treatment.
not. Yeah, we haven't built
Yeah, I
up
get
to
it.
the point in which
it would be
is
lost.
that can be tackled.
It would be lost.
So we need to build a few more layers up to the shared. Once we get to the shared layer, we can start to tackle both temperaments and what were you talking about just now? The you were just asking me about this. What was it?
I forget.
Damn you.
I'm busy. I'm doing stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to get from the mimetic layer to the point of where the social OS of self-talk and self-thought and all of that kind of stuff is actually
Mhm.
emerging, which we're going to draw another point of interest to the fact that it is actually found beyond the horizon of the neural operating system.
Mhm.
And it's effectively a mirage. And that mirage is constructed by the modes of perception, which means it takes on this mode, that mode, the other mode.
Right. To see the different aspects or modes.
So
Of it.
it's a way to express the layer above the horizon without leaving
Mhm.
the
Now,
constraints of the neural operating system
kind of
itself.
Point of order. I think that the NOS should encompass the social operating system, like the 4 layers. And you should be able to say NOS, and okay, you mean yes, the 3 that you can directly experience, plus over the horizon as a part of that, I think. Like, you should be able to say that the NOS, or are we saying that it's emergent?
It's complicated.
SOS is an absolutely emergent thing.
So here's the thing.
Like, we're
It's
past the horizon.
The spectacle mechanics is where this is apparent.
So,
In that, you know how you
Shania.
hold on. Let me finish.
social
Let
operating
me
system
finish.
has a different language.
It does.
That's what it is.
But this is how it merges into the pre-horizon state while not being that, only representative of that. The neural
Right.
operating system is bouncing objects off the screen constantly. Right? Objects disappear out of the screen, reappear back into the signal sensory, evolve. The record of that evolution survives as other objects that cross this horizon.
Like category objects.
Yeah, and built up about the original objects. So
Mhm.
they're the mirage counterpart, the continuity of the object.
Right. So how every category you ever know, when you think about it, is actually just a series of images
So
through
when
your
these,
history.
so when these things pollute the entire spectacle,
And overtake it.
right, it causes this smoke screen of a coherent, very well laid out narrative out there,
Yeah.
but you're not out there.
That it
But
forces
you're not out there. You're just bouncing objects against this fucking horizon all the time.
it
anyway.
forces you to interpret a reality in a certain way.
So nothing changes about the mechanics, but within the confines of the system, the entire spectacle gets polluted to shit. Like the APS
Mm-hmm.
beforehand,
Yeah.
the APS drives the pollution.
So is this your,
The APS
your term?
being like the learning machine.
Yeah.
The machine learning element of
The
the brain.
modeling ability.
No, it's literally the inert machine learning part of the brain. The thing that
Yeah.
keeps growing as your senses keep
Mhm.
reinterpreting data.
That's
It just puts shit
That's what I said,
together
man,
over
yeah.
and over and over and over. It's inert. Other than it works that way. And
Right.
then it's responsible. Again, the spectacle, you can't control that part. It's in the smoke screen in and of itself. It just
Mhm.
keeps bouncing up. But the mimetics
And
behind
so
it, you can. You can do something about the
correct.
mimetics.
Once you get to a certain layer of
And that
of
has to
thought.
do with what artifacts you want to send back down
So,
the pipeline.
We're actually all innocent, right?
Yes.
Because it's just happening to us. We're not. We're just.
Yes,
we're
this is
experiencing
the reason why we're
the
innocent.
thing just happening to us, and we do have some control, but we have to really be taught how to have that control.
This is the meaning of our innocence. In this, we are innocent. It's not just a matter of arbitrary, oh, it's not all our fault.
Man,
It kind of is.
it's not my fault. Yeah.
It's not my fault, it's not your fault, but it is our fault.
Right.
But the innocence isn't derived from other people's actions. The innocence is derived as being caught up in a loop that you do need to work to get out of.
Right. Yep.
Hardlining it.
We are all innocent. We are.
Yep, that's the one.
Don't want to get copyrighted, so I'm not gonna carry on.
What do you have, like 3 seconds, 5 seconds?
I think so. And that was so good that, just someone might have mistaken it for an actual endorsement. With that, I think we'll take a few minute break and be right back. 3 layers. Active mode, so you've jumped the horizon into the NOS.
Yeah, so
From
you're
the
jumping
lower layers,
from
yep.
the artifact into the mimetic.
Mimetic, yep.
To make sense of what's happening next, you can't just go by strict observation. This is where you have to inject a model into it artificially and interpret and interpret it and then
Compare like
you don't
the,
have
the sense.
this
with,
is this is that idea of the immateriality of this of the rest of these layers beyond this horizon. They're immaterial in the sense that you cannot use material means to look at them. The fine material, if you will, the speculative material,
yeah.
if you will, exists. You can still infer, okay, this pattern might amount to that. This pattern might amount to that, and we can construct this and this and this and this out of that. But once you get to the point of running the simulation, which has been bootstrapped since birth, so that means each moment is also built up upon the previous moment.
Context of the body. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very much individual.
Big time.
You lose that ability to find material means by which to make the assertions. So you have to inject a conceptual model to continue to make sense of it. And this is the nature of this horizon.
Fake news.
Well, something you're stuck
plateaus,
with. You're stuck doing this either
platforms,
way.
sound bites.
You're stuck doing this either way, either in the form of mythology or in the form of scientific inquiry or whatever. You got to construct immaterial models.
Pardon?
This is basically the defining element of it. Every model you construct past that point is not material. It's cognitive. It's
and you're not even aware that you're creating models.
Like numbers, they're not material. They are abstractions.
So here's an interesting thing.
Representations.
We're not even aware that we're creating models, and yet here Portal Mountain is offering a model for how you create models, so that you can see that you create models.
Yeah. DNA. That is the DNA.
Mm-hmm. It just shows you what it is.
Different articulation of it. One is more specific.
So this
to context
is like a
than
bootstrap for proper
view.
Thinking view.
Correct view. Right view.
Right.
Look at that. It's
Right
coming up
view.
again.
Right view, right view. All hail right view.
From right view stems right effort. From right effort.
Well, view's right up there as far as causality is concerned.
So yeah, my point there is that we leave the realm of the material, not
Don't do that.
not because of some woo explanation, but because in order to interpret the rest of the combination, the active combination of the context in which an individual mind is operating in, right? In an effort to do that, you have to inject a conceptual model in place, much like you had to do with physics beforehand,
Of course.
to see whether it pans out.
Any science. This is education. This is fundamentally Education Guild.
Mm-hmm.
The very start. The very beginning.
So
We didn't...
So to install this abstraction, we use the metaphor.
We've got time, though, to chill. Basically.
We can discuss it freely too, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So to construct that, an artificial model with which to represent the immaterial portion stemming from the mimetics.
Mm.
Now we've built up the artifacts. Now what?
Yep.
Right. That idea.
Mimetics would be called immaterial because it's like so meta.
Right. We can't use material means in order to deduce patterns.
Yeah, so carry on.
So what we have to do is use immaterial means to deduce the patterns. We have to come up with something. That's the gist of it. That's the horizon of it. We have to create a model to articulate the experiential qualitative aspect.
This is the most difficult thing, period.
So, to do that, we
carry on.
use a metaphor. The metaphor that really, really works for us so far, for its explanatory power, for its ability to explain what we're talking about, this immaterial sort of concoction consists of an apparatus much like a projector, which is not too far off from how we can see people.
Sure, yeah.
And the projector works in one way. Film passing through frame by frame. Memeplex. That's the layer we just touched on.
Yeah.
How would you put it all together?
Something is emergent from that. So we know at one layer, this projector, the film is flowing, light is projecting through.
Correct. So one thing to note right there, film does not constitute objects. It constitutes representations of objects in a way that allows us to construct the thing.
Because we know we can interpret those visual and auditory cues differently. It's up to
red on a stoplight
context
versus red on a shirt versus red on a car all mean different things. But on film, there's just pigments of red. That's the idea.
So it has to be interpreted.
With the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment, it has to be all strung together.
Right.
And that has to be injected back into the flow to continue to shape what the next moment will look like, what the next moment will look like, what the next moment will look like. So this is where the analogy kind of breaks down, obviously. But in the film analogy, the three layers are very distinct in that the mimetic is the running film, even though it's modified on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
The abstract phase space is like this smart lens that every time something projects through it, it modifies itself based on what's on the screen.
Right.
To re-project it a different way based on what got projected as a result.
That's
and
weird.
then it's kind of dead but alive, and then there's the screen which just does nothing but put shit together into one moment after another.
I thought you were going to bring up the deadness of the abstract and the concrete layers in interpreting, like as lenses, like dead lenses. Remember you brought this up before?
They are dead, and I was trying to drive at that by saying...
But you're saying like the mimetic is the kind of where the action is, quote unquote, and these two filters of whether I'm looking at it abstractly or concretely are like different. We're just taking snapshots from this.
Imagine the screen being a nervous system that feeds the mimetic tape through. So every time it passes through the abstract phase space lens and gets projected onto a concrete object, that is the version of the object that gets fed back into the film, modified by what happened here and what happened here. So it's dead because it's not in control.
Yeah, but yet the things that came from there have a lasting and permanent effect on the whole cycle.
So like machine learning,
yeah,
it's getting fed a pattern over and over and over and over again. Each
but
time
it's
slightly
cancerous
different.
and out of control.
Each time slightly different. Correct.
It's not
and
making
then
smart.
so it's dead in that sense. It
not being
hasn't.
smart.
So it gets all crustified and it gets all misaligned with itself, which is why new information coming in become artificial from the artifacts.
Mhm.
Overloads. They break the
Artificial
they break that lens of how to
artificial
construct the picture.
overload is
And if you break that lens, that's a pain response.
it's an external commandeering of the lens or the abstract lens system, because you overload the abstractions available to the neural OS.
If you don't have a lot of isomorphisms for the model in which your APS is currently holding, add in new
Mhm.
and new and new and new distinct
Doesn't
and distinct
necessarily
and
help.
distinct and distinct and distinct models overloads the system. If you have everything nicely meshed together as isomorphisms of each other, it's a lot less to remember.
I wonder. I
Like,
I have a feeling
Our
like
ability to remember,
you're-
think about it. Our ability to remember all the terms and their actual meanings after
overload
the fact.
overload is good, I think, as a term. I think it can work. I think it's gonna work.
And
But
it
we
is
just got to
artificial.
work out exactly what's going on here. An overload probably has to do with the plateaus and how everything has been already
Yeah,
externalized. And so over the overload is that everything is fucking, from all senses, all angles, pointing to the same just systemic structure. Just utilize the market market machine. Utilize the market machine, and and you're good.
Plateaus should be seen as more complex as they build up, but as they are more complex, they're more fragile.
Yeah.
And being more fragile means there's more ways in which overload happens.
So we truly are in a time of an
We're at
instability.
the end.
Instability, because
We can't keep going.
if what you said is true, then we would expect instability.
Sorry, let me rephrase this. The only way you're going to keep going is like this.
But and
Broken,
we you know
zombified,
what? We talked about
half
this
dead.
in the last 15 minutes of the last live stream. We talked about this. It's kind of like the apocalyptic scenario of what to do next or now. You know, like acknowledging and bringing up that point that there's nothing left to exploit almost, and shit crashes, and just it crashes, and so we're in the middle of a cycle, one of these fucking cycles. Do we just take it? What do we do? Can we transform it into something way better and unexpected? Just because it's a financial fucking, people owe some bankers some shit, that's why we must shut down the economy? Remember, demand and supply. Demand is always everywhere. Demand. There never is a shortage of work. Ever. Fucking
You're
ever.
pushing to the choir on that one.
Never exists a shortage of work. Right?
No,
So you
bro,
see where I'm
let me
going with
refute
that.
you.
Man, you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah, and
There always is something to do. Demand is always there. We must, in our corporations,
that is the premise.
do supply that satisfies demand. That's your only fucking job. Never mind surviving even as a company. If you supply the demand that exists, your company will survive. That's not a question. If you know, right, like the market will support you. The demand and supply market. The guild will support you if you as a company do supply demand. Your feedback onto the people. Right? That's not that's not what exists. People, corporations aren't focusing on that. That's the breakaway civilization. again,
Okay.
right? That's what it is.
Calm down.
Disconnection
Calm down.
from the people. Who do they think they are spending our
Okay,
money?
so let's bring it back to
All right, monologue.
Neural
Jenya,
OS.
monologue for like 5 minutes.
Neural OS. So we use the metaphor of the projector to sort of describe what we're looking at in the neural
OS.
Stack.
Mm-hmm. Projector. You got your abstract, your concrete, your dead lenses, quote unquote.
Yeah, concrete, abstract, and mimetic. The mimetic is the flip side of the buildup of the neurological system itself, where we can depart from any kind of capacity for physical representation. And we jump into a more metaphorical realm in which we are describing utilization of said artifacts into unified sort of projected picture. One that projects a picture and acts in it. In
Naturally.
short.
Yep.
So that's really the attempt to get from point A to point B here is to
simulation machines.
Is to describe a simulation that could potentially be running on top of this neurological monstrosity that nature has created for us.
And here we are.
So, despite the fact that this would be like the description of the actual operation of the body itself, in an effort to project some sort of conscious experience, we have to dive into another layer for the social OS in determining how the shared layer is emergent outside of this projected metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And so this is...
there's like multiple projectors. Because they replicate.
No, one projector, but influenced by itself. Because it is constructed of certain layers of itself, like the metaphorical layers of the film, the projector, the screen. Yeah. Right. We can now take what's being projected onto the screen, connected to its direct experience of running the film, running the projection, focusing the film, and the projected objects is three different things that it deals with.
When we are aware of our own self processes, in that we are this projector with these processes going on, suddenly we become aware through self-awareness that we are part of something, that there are many of these things happening all at once, and we're part of a bigger community.
Sure.
That's, I think, the jump that you're looking for.
No. Not that. That is a correct
the replication.
Jump. That is one
jump to the over the horizon to the social and all that.
I'm trying to make the jump for the horizon to the shared. From the perspective,
that's very similar, isn't it?
How do the neural... No.
How do you differentiate that?
So the argument we are having is this. How does the neural OS, in its entirety, only really exist to express the social OS? So, as a human being, you're not stuck there asking yourself, why are my eyes sending this... contraption through my brain to give me this picture.
There's no discussion there.
You put it together in the greater context of an ongoing narrative. And so it's that jump that I'm trying to bridge as to where self-contained, if you will, neural OS makes the jump onto operating in terms of explicitly in terms of a social OS to the point of where
Social
the neural
OS.
OS itself does not have to have a very concrete, direct representation at all.
So we have done
That's the modes of perspective.
we have done at least one good job here, in that we have said there is a social operating system and there is a neurological operating system. And the social obviously emerges out of the neural.
But the neural does not step outside of itself.
It doesn't have to, ever. It doesn't have to.
So,
It does what it does.
so the question is, how is the jump to the shared beyond the horizon operating system
To,
even happen?
to understand the jump, you must understand that the social operating system is happening in the localization. And it's also happening in other localizations.
That doesn't give you the mechanics. I'm
no,
trying
but
to.
I think that's the point, isn't
the
it?
mode. No, the
That
mode.
you're trying to get to.
Almost. The modes of perception. That essay, the original essay I wrote
Modes
back
of
in the
perception.
day about the narrative mode, the cosmological mode, and the
You linked me
phenomenological
to
mode.
it too recently.
Oh, that was a joke.
Something about Al Qaeda.
Al Qaeda blowjobs. I was
Yeah.
showing Lisa the links, that were pretty entertaining.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, the point
that's
being
good.
is
I'll
that
find it later.
the point being is that even though it operates in terms of something that's beyond the horizon, it stays in the horizon. And how does that reflection happen? The spectacle has the modes that reflect either the concrete, the abstract, or the mimetic layers at any given time, switching very rapidly between
Mhm.
all of them,
Sure.
allowing for the full narrative
If the skill
objects
is
to
there.
formulate.
Because that doesn't always happen, does it? In a,
It's
in a
short- it's
lucid
short,
way.
so this is
In a
where-
way we'll call lucid.
This is
Doesn't
where
always
there's
happen.
feedback. So when you're given language to express, it makes impressions inside mimetics. Mimetics push out a specific articulation of the memeplex, which is focused through a specific machine learned APS. Boom, picture that feeds back. It feeds back either to this mode, that mode, or this mode, and the picture continues.
And this is all available to you at the Portal Mountain Academy for a low fee of $5.99 per month.
And I'm not saying that this is the best way to describe it. I'm just trying to get to the gist of what is meant by the structure, right? So this isn't the kind of conversation
course,
that's going
of
to tell
course,
you
of course.
why this is happening or how.
Nobody was thinking that. No.
Rather, it's more along the lines of, if we take the machinery that we're looking about and try to recreate the shared layer out of that, one way to construct it, the way we seem to actually experience it, is moment
Shared.
by moment, in which
We
our
experience the
narratives
shared.
come back to us as something we throw out there into the world,
Isn't that-
and is fed back into us
I'll tell you something
after
weird.
the fact.
Something weird.
So it's very experiential in nature.
That moment-to-moment feeling I've felt with like dance and the decentralized dance party, and like this idea that you can just be like a public setting, everybody gather, and you've got boom boxes all connected by radio, and you're just a moving, moshing like pod of partiers just dancing. Some people got shit dressed up or whatever, you know, like you can create like something that people get sucked into. So your experience of this is, whoa, this freaking retarded amazing shit just rolled up into me, and they invited me to start dancing, and then I did. And like such
Is it
a
something like along the lines of an orgy too?
such a weird experience, but it's just dancing in the street or whatever.
I know.
right?
I mean, I'm just
There's
saying.
probably like
The only reason it made me
the
feel.
orgy version of that.
I'm only articulating that is because if you think about it.
In Roman
the,
times, that's what it was.
Actually,
Yes.
Romans were the
Yes.
fucking prudes
They
of their
did
time.
that, didn't they?
No. They were the fucking...
Somebody did it. No, guaranteed. And like thinking back to Egyptian celebration and shit, the whole purpose of this, of existing, is celebration. In rest. In rest, there is celebration. There's nothing left but, right? Just celebrate.
That is a
You've
fair
done
point.
everything you have to do.
That is a fair point.
The thing has been taken care of. Celebrate. And that's where like DDP, Decentralized Dance Party, and like other technologies like that, very intriguing.
So,
And to imagine being swept up along the street by a bunch of people dancing with like boom boxes and like just a music dance party flows over you and you get sucked into it and then go down the street with it.
So
like that's what happens.
So I
that's what happens.
I want to bring back down the point as to where the idea of the shared layer be materializing out of modes of perspective in the spectacle being reflective of the layers of the neural operating system that are immaterial to begin with, and
the modes.
The main
the meditation of how to go through the modes, through the layers of the NOS, through modes.
The main driver behind that thought is the fact that those would be the tools available to it in the active sense, out of which to rebuild the simulation which it's trying to recreate in the spectacle. So in the effort to create in the spectacle, the activities, the active portions of the simulation are feeding back into the simulation, creating modes. And the modes allow us to distinguish between abstract concepts, concrete concepts, and
right.
and
Yes.
how things fit together in an underlying
the modes of operation
in an intuitive way.
Are you saying that temperaments probably reflect two modes of operation? Like a temperament might be savvy to a particular mode?
Once we create the idea of these modes of operation as articulants of as the capacity to recreate the three layers in the social layer, we have now 4 layers from which to make isomorphisms to temperament. So the first 3 temperaments are lock and step with their neural operating system, whereas the perceptive temperament
keep going
the perceptive temperament takes that,
you got this,
and rebounds on the articulation on that very same deal. So turning the narrative right back onto itself in saying that all of these so the perceptive temperament never leaves the modes of perception, but is basically a weaving of the modes of perception into an articulation that incorporates all of them at once.
And if by all of them at once we mean, of course, the devotional and the feeling the feeling of concrete connectedness of the body embodied in the world, in the environment.
What we mean is that we're talking about a narrative that can make isomorphisms between the concrete, the abstract, and the mimetic in a single breath.
Yep, I guess I'm just kind of acknowledging the
whereas most breaths,
the concreteness of the temperament.
Yeah, whereas most breaths will capture one element of it, the idea of there being grandmasters, concrete. The idea of there being areas of concerns and natural concerns abstract. Those are the ideological formats.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of an entire elaborated model to supplant of this, to hold all the pieces together as to why the concrete and the abstract are related the way they are, blah 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 blah. Academic.
Mm-hmm.
And memetics is the thing, is the realm in which such metaphors fit together.
A moment ago, I was just reminded of the Huxleyan and Orwellian dichotomy as well. Just kind of related in how these things, systems can be perverted, I guess. Out of the pure potentiality of all the way things can go, in many cases it gets perverted through ego, through affect.
Huxleyan and Orwellian sit on a plateau in which memory has already been externalized. Then you have Fildickian. Fildickian is a spectrum of how much is being externalized, so from nothing to everything. And then you have
Philip K. Dick.
Yep.
Universal asshole.
And then you have the fourth author who's talking about how much of the representation has been mechanized and automated. So from
feels like
from sitting on paper and enacted by humans to sitting in machines.
It feels like we're kind of jumping up plateaus right now a little bit.
Oh, they're all
or
over the
just
spectrum.
Certain types of automation.
They're all over the spectrum, and that's because if you look at any given society, it's a different combination of those particular forces. So on the poorer side, you have less virtualization, more Orwellian. On the richer side, you have hyper virtualization, hyper Huxleyan.
And what that is hyper Huxleyan. The virtualization, the self-control, self-delusion.
One talks about the external information, where it's located, how abstracted that is. One talks about inner information and how externalized that is.
Yep. Damn.
So the more it's internalized, but the more it's virtualized, the more psychedelic clusterfuck it becomes, aka cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is like the extreme. Huxleyan, the extreme. Phil Dick and
Orwellian.
Huxley, Phil Dick. Orwell. And
there's another, eh?
There's a fourth.
Who could it be? I like Phil Dickian. Although I'm not a reader. But from what I gather from the guy, he was pretty psychedelic in his fucking spaced out shit.
He wrote about people who lived on paper. And how the more they lived out their lives on paper, the less they were able to live.
Great metaphor. Oh my god. Jenny, can you imagine somebody telling a story like that? Can you just fucking imagine it? What would cause people to say things like that? What would cause them? And with that, I'm calling a break.
functions
Does
Huxillianly,
boot?
part-time.
So wait, what?
Huxillian society will be Huxillian part-time only. You only are able to be free with your conscience so long as you participate in the consumption part of the productive Orwellian counterpart of the self-same society.
Like you're forced to do certain things.
Work is forced and Orwellian.
Right.
Consumption is unforced and a Huxillian. So even in the most Huxillian paradise state of affairs, you do have an Orwellian underpinning to slave labor, if you will, to make it work.
If you stop working, it's going to be bad.
Depending on your status, but yeah.
It's going to be bad. Yeah. How long you can hold out for. How much support you are privileged with.
Because eventually, at some point, work becomes more of a token than it is activity.
Yep.
Money is a token of work.
Token of work.
Made explicit by Bitcoin, by the way, because you have to do proof of work to get your token.
Well, it was interesting to me for a while, Bitcoin and all that, but then I realized once you learn about Holo and like Scepter and all that kind of stuff, you see a completely different perspective on cryptocurrencies.
For one, yeah.
And these currencies you would see then are everybody has a currency. There's not one single one. Everybody has a currency. And that's kind of your reputation.
Which means that nobody has a currency.
Right, but this is the kind of system that I'm seeing emergent.
But you know what it's hiding behind the fact? Is the old system underneath it, in which your currency is, if you don't have any fucking materials, your body and your work
labor
that you can do is your currency.
Sure, the market, yep. Central government currencies.
The more it goes away from the more that goes away from it, the more it stays exactly the same, which begs the question: what the fuck?
With currency and central banking, everybody kind of conglomerates up to this country level where countries are competing against each other, and because you're of a different country as I am, different nationality, we're competing and like we're different, right? And you see a world stage of like hundreds of these countries, and people who don't respect that kind of
I'm not sure where you're going with
organization, just the way the world is organized.
Well, yeah.
You've got deep states, you've got multiple deep states that nobody even officially acknowledges exist that are competing against each other.
And this is how you lose audiences.
Fuck, man. Do you know what I'm talking about, though? Like, break it down.
I know what you're talking about.
Tell me in a non-stupid...
In a non-stupid way, I will say this.
I was just... I was retarding the conversation, and I apologize. I'll take a time out.
Yes, it's a race to the bottom of the toilet. I will concede that the entire game...
The ego stacking.
Yes, it's a race to the bottom of the toilet. And the only outcome is getting flushed down to the sewer.
You compete to go upwards, but your actions shove everybody downwards. And everybody else is doing the same thing, and they're fucking shoving you downwards. Into the flame. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't tell people.
Don't do that.
That they are.
What to do?
Racist.
You can't tell me what to do.
Don't tell people they're being racist for being white.
Or are you stepping up for whites right now?
No. I'm saying.
Oh, good.
I'm saying. Don't take that don't take this too far. Clearly, this was a tongue-in-cheek for anybody that's not aware of how I talk.
And for the last half hour we got here, we could dive into those crazy old topics. We in the prologue we brought them up. Prologue. It'll be linked in the description there, but prologue.
The
Yep.
point being is that you've already noted that it's not anybody's fault. Not in the sense that they could have done anything about it, not having the knowledge that is being articulated to begin with. Like, it's impossible to make that claim. If they cannot articulate it isomorphically to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
how is it possible to
no
blame
language.
anybody for the damage they've done
Correct. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that function? They had
This is
no idea
like,
that it could have been done differently.
Fundamental innocence built into the model, right there.
So we covered that part.
Mhm.
But it is your responsibility, despite it not being your fault. The state of the world as
Correct.
it is
Correct.
in the hands of everybody that's
And
currently here.
how do we relate to each other but to know and see how we're doing? What do we do? What do we do?
So that's what I meant by that comment. Just there is no mentality of guilt that's gonna make it work.
Agreed. Yep.
It's much like being guilty for being white.
It's
Much like being guilty
well,
for being civilized. Much like being
because
not that I'm saying white is civilized. What I'm saying is that the trajectory of civilization
anybody would say a
is
lot
the
about
cause
that. Yep.
of the
I hate it. It's no
historicity
good.
is the cause of
It's no good what's happened.
and historicity is the cause of white privilege.
There is some good that happened, but it's no good what happened.
Anyway, we've kind of established how the shared layers is formatted. With the shared layer, we can now denote temperaments because we have the mimetic layer, we have the abstract layer, we have the concrete layer, we have the shared layer. The shared layer being an amalgamation of all three priori to it in an effort to see the three. So basically, it just talks about the narrative being in terms of the neural operating system itself. So, that's the perceptive temperament. The perceptive temperament articulates the neural operating system, whereas all other narratives don't bother. That's another way you could say it.
Yes, correct.
So
Yep.
it's not a special mode.
No, you're right.
It's not
You're
a
right.
special mode. It's those modes being articulated at once.
And even the devotional and pragmatic are kind of in their own world to some extent.
Exactly. The pragmatic in the cosmological framework.
They're lucky to isomorphically reflect the other, that of pragmatic being the other, devotional the other being pragmatic, over the abstract concrete divide, right?
Which is why you find so many Zen masters very respectful of other traditions.
Mm-hmm.
That being sarcasm.
Well, I found respect for the devotional, being pragmatic even myself, right?
What I'm saying is that when you start to it's a comment about being locked into your own worldview. With the exception of the perceptive, which is an extreme special case, alongside the mimetic, which is another extreme special case because cognitive window alignment tends to make it somewhat unreachable. The point being there is the locking into one's world is more prominent in the academic, the pragmatic, and the devotional temperaments. And,
wow. And not so much from the perceptive.
The perceptive has its own hang-ups.
Sure.
because it can get.
But their hang-up isn't that they're locked into one or another.
No.
Right.
In
Gotcha.
that it gets so psychedelic that they're incapable of
There's problems with that.
of relating back.
Tough to relate to people.
Yeah, it's,
But
when you get too far into your own story, it's tough to relate back into the different pieces.
kind of like you'd think really great guides, though, maybe, because of that ability to kind of see the different ways.
It's a problem of appropriation. Because for the perceptive, because it all flows.
That's what caused problems.
It all flows together.
And equivocation.
It would seem to them that the full blown exposition of this, missing the full blown exposition of that, or that, will seem incomplete, and so there will be a sense of, no, I have the complete story because I dive into everything at once. And so it has its own way of getting stuck into its own loop.
It's almost, like a problem of humility.
Yeah. So that said, we can actually move into describing temperaments a little bit with relation to those layers.
You think we're there? We're at that point?
Well, we are near that point. Here's what I can say. Academic and the isomorphism that it has with the mimetic layer of the neural operating system refers to the tendency towards the raw materials, qualitative in this case, to hone in on the
context,
on the qualitative formulas, if you will, and stitch those together into representations, into a working literature, systemic literature, like expressing what's
that.
what.
I like that, man. This is our project of Portal Mountain.
This meme
of writing.
relates to this meme that relates to this. So hence the correlation with the layer.
So get it down and use it.
And then we have the correlation between the pragmatic and the abstract from the point of view of the APS is a dead machine learning cosmological relationship builder, right? It's kind of like the scaffold.
Yep.
That continuously is being built and rebuilt to represent the world out there, or in there. It really depends on the person.
In and out.
Right, but the point is that it's an abstract construct. The universe is the abstract construct,
and it's the model of the holon, the HGMA. How the elements, which are allowed in by hygiene, as the environment part of the environment which is sheltered, things allowed in to participate as an object in something bigger.
Well,
right, the Hellonic Model, love that shit, man.
The idea of the object is more towards the devotional now side, because now we're looking at the perfect objects to mimic. Right. So, in a concrete sense, in a narratological sense,
like the Grandmaster, Jesus Christ.
Right, and so we got to remember, we're looking at the concrete spectacle in its mode of perception that can take on the mimetic, the abstract, and the concrete, respectively.
Right, so perceptive
So,
mode.
so when we said academic, we're talking about a spectacular layer driven by the format of it, the mimetic layer,
Right.
the
So-
overlay of what's available to it, taking a stronger
This is
hold.
a bit crazy.
It is.
Because
It does require a lot of
you're saying
mental flexibility.
my mode right now is academic. Therefore, what I'm about to tell you is, in this academic setting of mimetic relationships between abstract and concrete.
Yet it's
so
all
the
narrative.
mimetic language is speaking a relation between abstract and concrete.
And yet it's all coming out as narrative that feeds back as artificial memes that will reflect back into categorical
To be interpreted.
and feed back into recurring objects, so over time. And so if your narratological mode keeps objects from the mimetic layer over and over and over again, we call that academic. If it does it for the abstract layer, again, conceptually over and over and over again, and just tries to build a cosmos, a single cosmos out of it, the difference, the noted difference is that the ontology
You're right.
becomes either a singular ontology or it becomes a fragmented
Singular ontology.
or it becomes fragmented and all over the place.
Probably a lot of times singular ontology and not even realizing that there's the bigger picture of the academic, and
Yeah.
things can be split out and go fractal.
So
The Hellonic Model and
So
all that.
one way to distinguish the two temperaments is one moves off of a linear sort of concrete set, ongoing narratological cosmos, whereas the other can switch it up as necessary, which makes it which also gives it that extreme quality that you find in the perceptive, in that they also switch all ontologies as necessary. The devotional and the pragmatic don't engage in ontological mental games. There is either this cosmos or that cosmos or this other cosmos, and this is what we're working through.
It's usually focused. Ideally, it's focused on the mind to the body, and you're not going out to the immaterial things that quote unquote don't exist, or who
Which
knows.
is interestingly enough is preferred by the system, and the extremes are shunned by the system. You don't want to stir the pot.
There's no question to that. It must be that way,
So-
because the thing can't be questioned. The outside is the questioning. That which is outside the system is the question.
So, in covering the three temperaments, the fourth temperament is basically the amalgamation of all three of them running together at the same
Fourth
time.
by academic, or you mean up to
From
perceptive?
from academic to pragmatic, then we tackled devotional. So now we're going into perceptive. But perceptive is tackling a layer that's above the horizon. Well,
Right.
to bring it back to the neural OS itself, it's a comment on the modes of perception being utilized as necessary without being stuck on any one of them.
Right.
And so in that
Right.
without
Not to take any of them literally.
and in that it's a reflection of what's beyond the horizon without being anything beyond the actual horizon, simply being in terms of the first three. So there is no real stepping out onto the shared layer for any one neural OS, but
Right.
but mastery of what is beyond that horizon
Mastery is convergent.
is found in the isomorphism of those three layers interacting together clearly. So in that
Yep.
in
That's
that
why
there's
it's
a difficulty.
convergent.
So when there's no clarity in that, it's not
Proper modeling, just to see what you're doing. Proper model.
feedback.
Model, good. Present model. Present. So
The kind of people you would find in the shared layer that are sort of like mastering all aspects of the neural OS to express the social OS traditionally would have been the shamans. Today would have been the therapists, the psychologists.
Professionals.
Yeah, but with limited capacity.
Yeah.
They do weave these layers together. What they don't do is express the point of this weaving.
So, isn't it interesting that this is how members can recognize members and masters fairly easily, is if this weaving is happening, this constant begging for context to be built up into it all.
And
Don't talk to me unless you're in context.
And what's interesting there is that it's impossible to even start that conversation without the precedence of the structure of the model in terms of the layers.
Right. The NOS, that which you find looking inward.
To even make the comment, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's a noble cause, a thing that people should work on. We should model it. We should socially understand this inner experience.
Oh, the moment you start telling people that they should.
Well, should, why? Why should? Oh, I don't know. Oh, never mind.
You should take a shit.
I give up.
Why?
I give up immediately.
Because your gut is full of it.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. No, I mean, I retract my statement. With all due respect, I retract my statement.
All right. Well, the grand finale here is that we do have a mapping, a rough, ill-articulated
proposals
mapping from the neural OS to the temperaments involved and to some extent the reason for it.
Yep.
Again, we're talking metaphor in the extreme. So
NOS to temperament.
if somebody's trying to make those mappings literally, they're gonna have a very difficult time.
It's tough. It's not a exact system.
It's not even tough. It's pointless.
Yeah. To throw a bunch of analogies together and say that that's a machine, things are gonna blow up right away. So.
Yeah, so this is meant to be like a rough sketch of the idea. We do need to articulate this better.
That's what the book is for, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Trust me, man. Trust me.
You're gonna watch this video, and you're gonna remember me saying it.
I look forward to the time when I watch myself again, creating notes. But yeah, that's side note. I do want this book to be outlined well before I start searching for topics, like literally searching transcripts.
Today, I think the most useful thing I've done is to rank up the layers as to why they're built the way they are, and with the added bonus is like you have to overlay an artificial model to get the rest of the logic going.
Bootstrapping.
Past the artifact, you really need the horizon expressed properly. And with that explanation, the next horizon is also articulated by saying it's built up of the spectacle reflecting its own layers in the neural OS, not the artificial layers, but the mimetic and the abstract stuff, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Here's a word.
That's a death cycle in the making, but not necessarily is one. It is one if it just runs away like this, but it isn't one if it slows down and sends shit back down like it's a proper circle.
The term which is cool, I think, is self-same. Have you heard that? Self-same?
I say it a lot, actually.
It's a cool term for an object which is loopily connected to itself, up and down. Strangely. Very strangely. Glad we created that moment. I'm about to take a break up in here, but actually, I would say that, but it's almost time to get heading on home. Heading on out of here.
My happy home life.
So I feel like we almost only, because we created some kind of like outline of what this dev meeting could be like, and I think we only got into like the first half, maybe.
Well, we did get to express the temperaments and where they come from.
I agree, and think that we probably did actually create that arc, landing ourselves firmly in temperament, which is where we really wanted to go for like this was one of the first topics, right? Temperament, the neural operating system. Like we killed this horizon. So the horizon discussion, right? We went into that so much, and so this was like we thought this would take an hour.
We're struggling with the horizon because the second horizon that we're passing through, we're asking for a suspense of disbelief and to say, okay, please take this on faith. And the third horizon.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
It just builds up. You're right.
From that which
right.
you've taken on faith. So in this case, the second horizon that we're talking about is very, very important to get right.
This is a complex, adaptive, systemic environment. We're building it up like that. That's the interesting part.
One of the defining
it has to build.
One of the
up.
defining aspects of a complex adaptive system is that you cannot predict outputs from the inputs.
Because they're in a lower language. Your inputs are lower language. That's all you're providing. You're providing lower language.
Let's qualify that.
Okay.
A different language is in the same category as temperature means nothing to a molecule.
Yeah.
Because temperature is derived from
about that.
collections of molecules,
right. Mm-hmm.
And a collection of molecules has no description in the description of the molecule. So there's no predictive behavior.
So two molecules have collided with an activation matrix, meaning that their chemistry is about to change.
So what I'm saying is,
and they go. Now they've been changed.
What I'm really saying is that the language of describing the molecule has nothing to do with the language that describes pressure, temperature, any phenomena that can only be described as statistical representation of the
Right.
of its layer below.
So
So you only have
because these
statistics.
two molecules came in the proper arrangement, they spoke on a higher layer, just because they happen to be arranged so perfectly that their collision allowed the molecules to swap, right? And something
The
happened
overall-
on a higher layer.
The overall energetic interchange
I get it.
has no meaning in the system that it's in, but has a meaning in the system that it comprises.
Oh, pausing times. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
You receiving the idea? The idea is, dude, it's been freaking awesome, man, and now we're closing it down. And appreciate everybody, our Portal Mountain peoples, and anybody who listens to this live stream with a critical ear and thinks about stuff. And maybe wants to have a conversation one day. Who knows? Is that it? It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
So the most difficult things to accept out of this exposition is the suggested model of the projector.
Some kind of reality, which may be true, maybe
So-
not.
So we can make the case for the artifact. It becomes far more difficult to make a case for the projector model because of the obvious issue, which has to do with experiential
Like you mean the
capacity
NOS, neural operating system?
right.
The feeling of concreteness or abstractness?
You dive into the land of quality rather than quantity, and the problem there is that you don't
Or the
have
other way around.
you don't have a direct representation going back and forth. Not that you had it previous layers, which would try to sort of dissuade from thinking when we described the earlier layers, but now we're coming to a point where we have to completely detach from the ability to be able to observe something in the material sense and have to come to terms with observing something in the qualitative sense in asking ourselves whether the experience matches said description of the quality or not.
Yep.
And this is where we're
back to the Great Schism. And
this is where the sound bites
the
of
origin,
the charlatan
the
and
origin,
the sound bites of the non-charlatan can make themselves separated.
The
out.
origin of the disconnection between the body and the mind. The Great Schism. Gentlemens, love it. Love it times 10.
High
But
five.
for that, we will, yes, call it a night. Thank